coming to you with them summer vibes. Hi, my name's Vashi and I like to talk about finances, well-being and being single. This is part 2 of my 10-part series on investing where I break things down for you. If you haven't watched my first video, part 1, I recommend you go and watch that before continuing with this video because that covers the things you should consider before you actually start investing. Again, if you find any of what I share in this video or this series useful, please share this with your friends, your sisters, your mom, your boo, and even your side things because we can all level up together. Okay? And of course, please leave any comments or questions down below and I will definitely get back to you. So this video is going to be a really short video about what the stock market actually is. You're probably aware of the term stock market, but what does it actually mean? Well, the stock market is basically a place where the buying and selling of shares of publicly held companies occurs. A share is a single unit of ownership for a company, and a publicly held company is one where retail investors, such as you and me, can buy shares of that company. The stock market is also where shares are issued, and this is just a fancy word for saying being made available. So think of a company as being a cake and a share being a slice of that cake. And if we're using the same analogy, think of the stock market as a bakery where you can go and buy various different slices of different cakes. You with me? The stock market versus the stock exchange. You may have also heard of the word stock exchange, and this word is often used interchangeably with the word stock market, but stock exchange is actually a subset of the stock market. So if we think back to the bakery analogy, the stock market is the bakery, right? Well, if you were to go into this bakery, the stock exchange would be different counters within that bakery. So you have the London counter with cakes from London, the New York counter with cakes from New York, the Japanese counter, etc., etc. You get my point, right? Here are some of the most popular stock exchanges, and you may have heard of them. They all have varying times of opening and closing, and that's why if you know a trader, they may be awake at odd hours of the day. How the stock market works. As a generalization, the stock market provides a secure and regulated environment where people can go in and buy shares and other things known as financial instruments such as bonds, commodities, exchange traded funds. But we'll get into what all of these are later on in the series. The stock market enables companies to make their shares available for the first time to the public through a process called an initial public offering, or an IPO. And the stock market basically serves as a marketplace for these shares. So going back to our analogy, think of this process like a new baker going to this bakery in order to get their cakes and cake slices available to the general public to buy. This process essentially helps companies raise capital or money for their company through the issuance of shares. This essentially means that the company will divide itself into a number of shares, for example 10 million shares, and it will make a chunk of this available for the public to buy. For example, 2 million of these 10 million shares. These shares will then be made available for the public to buy, for example, at the price of £3 or dollars per share. People who buy these shares, like you and me, will hold these shares for a certain amount of time, so usually years, in the hope that they will raise in price and therefore hold more value. And also in the anticipation of receiving some income from dividends. And dividends are basically a small part of the profit that the company might make that it passes on to its investors. The stock exchange So, you know, these counters that we have in the bakery, they will act as the middleman for this process. And in order to facilitate this process, they will take a small fee from the company. Stock exchanges will also maintain company news, any financial reporting, and announcements in relation to that company. And you can usually find this on the stock exchange's website. So, as a new investor, if you want to do more research in companies before you invest in them, it's a good idea to go onto the stock exchange's website and take a look at the information about that company. And this should give you an idea of what their current financial situation looks like. And we'll get into a bit more detail on how to do this in a later video in the series. So hopefully that gives you a good overview of what the stock market actually is. But you know, we're only scratching the surface here. So if you would like to read in more detail or read further, I will signpost you to some resources in the description bar below. In my next video, part 3, I will talk about how to buy and sell stocks. If you're here early, firstly, thank you. You may have to wait a few more days before that video comes out, but if you're here a few days late, please skip on to part 3. See you there, okay?